Hello everyone. Thank you for coming back to the channel. In today's episode, Diem and CEO Toan's story reaches an emotional turning point. After more than a month of searching in fear and despair, with the help of the police, and Diem finally reunites with Toan at the small house of an elderly woman, the person who took him in and became his only support during the time he lost his memory. Amid the fear confusion and the elderly woman's loving attempt to hold on to him, Diem chooses not to force him or push him back into painful memories. With patience and sincerity, she asks for permission to take him home so he can return to his family and begin a new journey, even though his memories have yet to return. Will CEO Toan gradually remember his past and what lies ahead for him and Diem after leaving that peaceful home? Stay with us until the end to follow the story. If you enjoy these emotional developments, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to support the channel and not miss the next episodes. The morning in Diem's house began with a different atmosphere than usual. Early sunlight poured through the window, falling across the neat dining table where three people sat together: Thu's mother, Thu, and Diem. Breakfast was simple, but today, no one was in a hurry to eat. Diem sat across from Thu holding her chopsticks while her gaze drifted. She had barely slept the night before, her thoughts fixed on one thing: CEO Toan had been found. The silence lingered for a few seconds before Thu spoke first. Diem, he said slowly, his voice calm and steady. You should stay home and rest a bit this morning. Early this afternoon, I'll go with you and the police to the place where Toan has been living. Diem looked up at him. Emotion flickered in her eyes, and she gave a gentle nod. Yes, I'll do that. Thu's mother, sitting beside them, watched with a mix of worry and anticipation. So, you found Toan? She asked. Diem smiled, her eyes slightly moist. Yes, we have. Thanks to the police and Thu. She turned to Thu's mother, unable to hide the happiness rising in her heart. I'm so relieved. At least now. He won't be alone anymore. Thu's mother let out a soft sigh, her expression easing. That's good to hear. These past few days, I haven't been able to feel at ease. The three of them continued breakfast in a comfortable silence. No one said much, but they all shared the same feelings: relief, hope, and anticipation. Outside, the morning sun continued to rise, and Diem knew that in just a few more hours, the long-awaited reunion would finally take place. At that moment, in the small house where CEO Toan was living with the elderly woman, the midday air carried a feeling that was both warm and uneasy. In the cramped kitchen, the two of them worked together to prepare lunch. It wasn't anything fancy, but the elderly woman still tried to cook a few extra dishes nicer than usual, as if she sensed that today would be different. As she finished setting the meal, she let out a soft sigh. It's been so long, and no one from your family has come looking for you. Yet, she said, her voice tinged with worry, I'm afraid that one day they will come, and you'll have to leave. Toan paused for a moment. He looked at her, his gaze calm and sincere. I don't need anyone else, he said. I just want to stay here with you. It wasn't meant as reassurance. It was what he truly believed. In the blurred world of his lost memories, the elderly woman was the only person he trusted. Lunch was set out on the old bed, the only place with enough space for the tray. They sat facing each other, eating slowly. No one spoke much. There was only the soft clinking of bowls and chopsticks, and a fragile sense of peace settling over them, as if both were trying to hold on to this moment before everything changed. At the local police station, near the elderly woman's home, the working atmosphere was serious and orderly. The police officer, Thu and Diem, were all present as the three of them walked inside, passing rows of desks where officers were processing paperwork. After being guided, they sat down at a desk facing the officer in charge of the area. The officer opened the file and confirmed the details. "We've received information about a man with memory loss who has been living at an elderly woman's pomelo farm in this area." Hearing that, Thu spoke up immediately. "We are his family. We're asking for your assistance in taking us to see Toan." Diem sat beside him, her hands tightly clasped together. She didn't say anything, but her eyes clearly showed both anxiety and anticipation. After further discussion and verification of personal information and circumstances, the local police confirmed that the two of them were indeed Toan's family. The officer nodded, his voice firm. "We will take you to where he is currently living." A few minutes later, the officer stood up and signaled for Thu and Diem to follow. The three of them left the station and headed straight for the elderly woman's farm, where the most important meeting was about to take place, filled with anticipation, anxiety, and hope intertwined. At the elderly woman's house, the midday hours passed in the familiar rhythm of work. Out in the yard, Toan and the elderly woman were fixing up the animal pens together. She gathered straw diligently, while Toan bent down to repair a rotting wooden plank, his hands covered in dust and dirt. He was so focused that he barely noticed his surroundings, as if his world at that moment was limited to the task in front of him. Footsteps sounded behind them. Two police officers, along with Thu and Diem, had arrived at the gate. This time, Toan was right there. There was no way to avoid or slip away. The elderly woman looked up first, startled for a moment when she saw the visitors, then quickly wiped her hands on her clothes. "Please, come inside and have some water," she said, her voice still gentle but slightly uneasy. The four of them stepped inside. Toan, however, remained outside in the yard, continuing his work with his back turned to the house, as if he wasn't ready to face whatever was approaching. The police officer spoke first, his tone serious yet calm. "Ma'am, after receiving information about a man with memory loss living here, we contacted other authorities to verify the situation and locate his family." He then turned to Thu and Diem. "These are Toan's family, Thu, and Diem, his girlfriend." The elderly woman froze for a brief moment. Her eyes flickered with surprise and concern. She turned to look out into the yard, where Toan was still working quietly. A faint sadness crossed her aged face, but then she let out a soft breath of relief. "So, someone has come to take you home after all," she said slowly. Then she smiled, her gaze kind and warm. "I'm happy for you, knowing your family is here." Inside the small house, the atmosphere fell silent. Outside, Toan was still unaware that his quiet life was standing on the edge of a major turning point, where the past, the present, and the people he once belonged to were about to meet. At that moment, the elderly woman stepped into the yard and called Toan over her voice, slow but firm. Come inside for a moment. Toan looked up, hesitating when he saw so many people. He wiped his hands on his shirt and walked closer, his eyes filled with caution. He glanced at the two police officers, then stopped when his gaze reached Diem. His face tensed instinctively. "Why did you call me?" he asked quietly. The elderly woman took his hand and pulled him to stand beside her as if to reassure him. "My child," she said slowly, each word clear. "These are your family." Diem. "She is the woman you love." Toan froze. He shook his head immediately. His voice rushed. "No, I don't have any family." Then he pointed at Diem, panic flashing in his eyes. She's the one who grabbed me on the road. I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying here with you." The air suddenly grew tense. Diem stayed where she was, her heart tightening, but she didn't step forward or say anything, giving him space to breathe. The elderly woman squeezed Toan's hand tighter, her voice lowering but still gentle. "No one is forcing you," she said. "I'm here. You're safe. If you don't want to go, no one will make you." She turned to Diem, then back to Toan. "She won't hurt you. I've seen it with my own eyes." Toan was breathing fast at first, then gradually slowed. His eyes were less panicked as the elderly woman remained in front of him like a familiar shield. He didn't fully believe it yet, but his fear had eased. I only trust you," he said softly. The elderly woman nodded. "Then trust me. Little by little, you'll understand." Toan didn't run away. He stood there for the first time, not trying to escape, even though his past was still a blur, waiting to be named. Diem stayed still for a few more seconds, making sure Toan had calmed down. She looked at the elderly woman and received a very slight nod, not permission, but trust. Then she stepped forward, slowly, one step at a time, giving him enough time to notice her without feeling startled. She didn't stand directly in front of him, and she didn't touch him right away. She sat down beside him, leaving a small space between them, close enough to talk, far enough that he wouldn't feel pressured. Her hands rested neatly in her lap, her back straight, her voice lowered. "Toan," she said softly. "I'm Diem." Toan turned toward her. His eyes were still cautious, but less tense. He studied her as if weighing every expression, every breath. "I'm not here to take you away," she continued. "I just want you to know I'm the woman you love." The words landed gently without demand or expectation. Toan stayed silent. He didn't argue, but he didn't nod either. Something inside him felt strange, like a thin thread brushing against his heart, something he couldn't quite grasp. "I've been looking for you for over a month." Diem said, her voice steady. "Most of the time, I didn't even know if I was looking in the right place. But I didn't stop." She didn't talk about sleepless nights. She didn't mention the fear that came with every bad lead. She said just enough for him to understand, not enough to hurt. Toan lowered his head, his fingers interlacing. "Are you sure?" he asked quietly. "I don't remember you." "I know," Diem replied immediately, "and I'm not asking you to remember." That answer made him look up. His eyes slowed, as if he had just heard something important. "I'm not here to question what happened to you," she continued. "I won't ask where you've been. or what you went through. Those things can wait, or they don't have to be known at all. Nearby, the elderly woman watched silently. The two police officers and Thu stayed out of it, allowing that small space to belong only to the two of them. Toan took a deep breath. Then, "What do you want?" he asked. Diem met his eyes calm and steady. "I want you not to be afraid. And if you allow it, I'd like to sit beside you." He didn't answer right away, but he didn't stand up and he didn't move away. That alone was an answer. Diem nodded slightly, as if in thanks. She didn't touch him. She let the distance remain. Then she began talking about ordinary things. "Are you used to working here yet?" Toan nodded. "Yeah." "Does she forget things often?" "She does," he replied, then smiled without realizing it. "But she always remembers to make sure I eat on time." Diem smiled with him. "That's good." She didn't ask if he had headaches. She didn't ask if anything felt familiar. She only asked things that wouldn't tire him. After a while, Toan spoke quietly. You don't seem like someone who would kidnap me." Diem nodded, accepting it. "I don't want you to think that." He looked at her, then looked down. "But you said you're my girlfriend." "Yes," she answered. "And if you don't believe that right now, that's okay." Those words made him pause. "It's really okay." "It is," she said. "Because I'm not here to take back something that was lost. I'm here to see if you're okay." Toan stayed silent for a long time. Inside his head, fragments of emotion collided: fear, doubt, and a very fragile sense of safety. He looked at the elderly woman, then back at Diem. "I'm not going anywhere," he said firmly. "I'm staying here with her." The elderly woman nodded, placing her hand on his shoulder. "No one is forcing you to leave." Diem leaned slightly closer, her voice even softer. "I'm not forcing you either. If you want to stay here, I can come visit." Toan looked up, uncertainty in his eyes. "Visit? How?" "Like now," she replied, sitting nearby, talking. No remembering required. He thought about it. The fear inside him eased. He no longer felt surrounded. He felt like he had a choice. "You won't ask me things that make my head hurt, right?" he asked honestly. "No," she shook her head. "Whenever you want to talk, I'll listen." Silence settled again. But this time, it wasn't tense. Toan exhaled slowly, his shoulders dropping. The elderly woman noticed her expression softening. Diem sat there a little longer, then stood up quietly. "I won't stay long," she said. "I just wanted you to know I'm nearby." Toan watched her without panic. "Will you come again tomorrow?" The question slipped out before he could stop himself. Even he seemed surprised. Diem smiled. Not overwhelmed. Not overly excited. "If you allow me." He nodded slightly. "I allow it." She turned to the elderly woman and bowed politely. "Thank you for taking care of him." The elderly woman took her hand, her voice gentle. "I can see you're not a bad person. That's enough for me." Diem left with Thu and the police. Before going, she didn't turn back to call Toan, didn't add any pressure. But just as she crossed the doorway, Toan called out softly, "Diem." She turned around. "Yes. You really mean it, don't you?" he asked. "That. You won't force me to remember." She nodded, her gaze steady. "I mean it." Toan nodded as well as if making a promise to himself. Then, I won't run. The air inside the elderly woman's small house settled after Diem spoke her final words. The sunlight outside had tilted no longer harsh, just enough to illuminate the faces of those standing before a decision too difficult to put into words. Diem turned to the elderly woman and bowed deeply. Her voice was slow and respectful, yet unable to hide the emotion within. "Ma'am, may I ask for your permission to take Toan home with me?" The words were soft, but they rippled through the room. The elderly woman froze. Her aged hand resting on the edge of the table trembled slightly. Then she sat down on the wooden chair by the door. She didn't answer right away. Her gaze drifted to the yard where Toan stood quietly, as if afraid that if she blinked, the young man would disappear. "I knew this day would come eventually," she said, after a long while, her voice hoarse. "I just didn't think it would come so soon." Diem stepped a little closer, still keeping a respectful distance. "I know you're worried," she said. "And I know that all this time you've been the only person he's trusted." The elderly woman looked at her. There was no doubt left in her eyes, only exhaustion and deep concern. "Are you sure you can take better care of him than I can?" It wasn't a reproach, but a very real fear from someone who had grown attached with her whole heart. Diem took a deep breath. "I don't dare say I'll do better," she replied, "but I can promise I won't leave him alone." The elderly woman closed her eyes for a moment. A single tear slowly rolled down her wrinkled cheek. She nodded very slowly. "I trust you," she said. "If I didn't, I wouldn't have let you sit beside him earlier." Toan stood there listening quietly to every word. He didn't fully understand the conversation, but one thing was clear. They were talking about him leaving. His hands clenched, his anxious eyes fixed on the elderly woman. "Grandma." He spoke, his voice trembling. "I don't want to go." She stood up and pulled him into a hug. Her arms were thin but tight, as if trying to memorize the feeling one more time. "I know," she said softly, "but you won't be going alone. You'll be going with your family." He shook his head, confusion in his eyes. "I only trust you." She gently stroked his back, her voice tender. "I trust you too, and I believe you'll be okay." Diem remained still, not interrupting that moment. She understood this was the elderly woman's way of saying goodbye. The two police officers and Thu quietly stepped aside, not urging anyone. After a while, the elderly woman released Toan, but kept hold of his hand. "Look at me," she said. "I'll still be here. When you remember, or when you want to come back and visit, I'll still be here." Toan looked at her, his eyes reddening. He didn't cry out loud. His breathing simply grew faster. "I'm scared," he whispered. Diem stepped forward. This time she didn't sit. She stood level with him. "I'm here," she said. "If you don't want to leave right away, we can take it slowly. But I hope you'll try to trust me just a little." He turned to look at her. His eyes held no memory yet, but there was familiarity. "You won't leave me, will you?" he asked. "No," she answered firmly. "I'll go with you." That was when the police officers finally spoke, their voices gentle. "Toan, we'll go with you. No one is forcing you. We just want to take you somewhere safer, where doctors and your family can care for you." Toan looked at each person in turn. The elderly woman, Diem Thu, the two officers. He let out a long breath, gathering what little courage he had left. "I'll go," he said to the elderly woman. "But don't disappear." She smiled through her tears. "I won't disappear. I'm right here." At last, Toan went into the room and packed a few belongings: a worn shirt, a pair of old sandals, and a scarf the elderly woman had once given him. He held them as if they were his most precious possessions. Before leaving, he looked back at the small house one more time. The elderly woman stood in the doorway, waving gently. "Go," she said. "One day you'll understand." Toan stepped out. This time he didn't run. He walked between the two police officers, with Thu leading the way and Diem walking close beside him. She didn't hold his hand. She simply matched his pace, letting him know she was there. Every step away from the elderly woman's yard felt heavy, but no longer panicked. At the gate, Toan stopped and turned back one last time. "Grandma." "I'm here," her voice called back. He nodded, then moved on. In the car, Toan sat beside Diem. No one spoke for the first few minutes. He looked out the window as the scenery slowly slipped away. His hands rested on his thighs, slightly trembling. "Are you okay?" Diem asked softly. He nodded, then shook his head. "I don't know," he said. "But with you sitting here, I'm less scared." She smiled and said nothing more. Thu sat in the front seat and saw Toan gradually calm down in the rearview mirror. He let out a quiet sigh of relief. "You did really well," he said to Diem. She shook her head. "It wasn't me. He chose it himself." The car rolled away from the red dirt road. Behind them, the elderly woman's house slowly disappeared. A chapter closed without noise, without force. Toan still didn't remember his past. But for the first time in a long while, he wasn't alone. He was moving forward with the police, with Thu and with Diem, not guided by memory, but by trust given slowly, yet firmly. And that was the true beginning of something new, where he returned not to remember, but to be loved once again.